what we've learned from running our innovation programs for the last 14 years here in Southeast Asia, and what it means to go from training to gaming. I'm going to teach you a little bit of theory and sort of insight around what we see is happening. I'm going to share some of our analysis of what we think it means to upskill talent and to focus on building and learning the best talent in Industry 4.0. And then I'm going to end with a little case study about what we've been doing with one of our clients, DBS Bank, to showcase how we've been applying some of these in the real world for the last 5 years. So just to introduce my company, my name is Jan. I am the founder and CEO of Leadapreneur. Leadapreneur is a company based in Malaysia. We've been here for over 10 years now. And what we do is we provide gamified upskilling programs and measurable ROI. So what that means is we're able to ensure that people are upskilling themselves, and we're actually able to track what the value of that upskilling is by virtue of the projects that they're creating through their upskilling. We've been working with many organizations in the region here across the last decade, many banks, financial institutions, OCBC, DBS, as well as Citibank, also across different areas such as in construction, like EcoWorld or DRB Highcom, which is industrial goods, or Goodyear. So we're really kind of industry ambiguous. We work with organizations from all industries. We're very happy also to work with universities as well. And in general, what we're looking to do is work with organizations that are excited about upskilling and are focused on the challenge of upskilling, especially to Industry 4.0 standards. What does it mean to be at the cutting edge of this exciting digital revolution that we're in? So let's get cracking into the actual presentation. And let's start things off with a little bit of context, which is, of course, welcome to Industry 4.0. Industry 4.0, of course, implies the idea that there are 3 other industries: Industry 1.0, 2.0, 3.0. And of course, we're all familiar probably now as professionals with this term Industry 4.0. But I think it's worth just taking a moment just to pause and understand it, because it really provides the environment in which we have to consider our thinking about upskilling. The first industrial revolution was really about bringing in the steam engine. So what this meant when Britain industrialized first is it acquired the power of the steam engine, and it suddenly had railways, it suddenly had the ability to mechanize and do things at a much greater scale. And it's because Britain industrialized first and most successfully that it was able to build the world's largest land empire, covering 1/3 of the human population. So that's really the power of an industrial revolution. It's a very big deal in capital letters. And then this Industry 2.0, that took off around 1900. And what that represented was the arrival of the combustion engine. And what that represented is cars, airplanes, and of course, critically, electricity and electrification. Suddenly, the world is being illuminated by light bulbs and has never been the same since. After World War II, we entered into Industry 3.0 that really powered globalization. And globalization is founded on a new kind of engine. Whereas Industry 1.0 was steam engine, Industry 2.0 is combustion engines, Industry 3.0 is the electronic engine. And what that means is that in the global era, we use electronic computer chips to be able to run global corporations. And that really is the essential magic that we've been growing up with up until about the 2000s. Now, in the last decade or two, what has happened is a new kind of industrial revolution has emerged, and it's only just beginning to emerge, and that's Industry 4.0. A big fancy term is cyber physical systems, but what that basically means is we're using artificial intelligence to use massive data streams to serve mass individualized solutions. So that might be that you can use AI to find the right kind of Spotify playlist, or to allow you to buy Amazon or Lazada goods online, or to order your Grab or Gojek. All of this is powered by artificial intelligence. And I think what's really important to understand about Industry 4.0 is it's only just beginning. You know, today it's 2024. Imagine going back 100 years ago to 1924, and electricity was only just starting. So I think one of the things to understand about where we're going is Industry 4.0 is only just beginning, it's only just starting, and the artificial intelligence revolution has only just begun. And I think it's important to understand these things because that is really what provides the context for talent and learning into the next decade or two. Essentially, the challenge for talent and learning is to keep up with the rate of digital industrialization and to be able to harness the new tools like artificial intelligence to be successful. Now, the problem, though, is that Industry 4.0 and the rate of change creates something that I call AVOCAT. Some of you might know the term VUCA, which has been popularized by the American military. And what I've done is I've added some extra terms to that, the A and the T, and I'm going to take you through that because I think it's very important to understand that Industry 4.0's reality today is extremely complex and it's extremely chaotic. Why is that important? It's important because talent needs to deal with AVOCAT. Talent needs to deal with an environment where things change very quickly. So for example, in a world of accelerating change, this is a chart here from The Economist, and it's representing the rise of China and its exporting of cars. And what you can see in that red line is that China in 2019 was behind India in exporting cars. And suddenly in the last 4 years, China, this chart is old, went from third place and is now fighting for first place. What that means is that today, China is the world's largest car market. Today, China exports more cars than Japan or Germany or the United States. And it is the #1 car manufacturer in the world, essentially, as a country. And this is a radical change to have only happened in the last 4 years. And we can see, for example, with the Europeans are really struggling around this in terms of trying to impose sanctions. So your talent is trying to deal with a world that's changing very, very quickly, like hyper fast. What would normally take decades now only takes a few short years. It's also a world in which suddenly volatile events are taking place. The war in the Ukraine is an excellent example of that. This famous quote from President Volodymyr Zelensky, "The fight is here, I need ammunition, not a ride," represents how quickly realities can change, and your talent needs to be able to respond to these challenges very quickly. It's also a world in which we're uncertain, where is the future even going? This chart shows the rise of the Bitcoin. A few years ago, just 4 or 5 years ago, Bitcoin was a negligible thing. And today it's a multi-trillion-dollar cryptocurrency that is considered by some to have a radical and promising future. So how does your talent respond to these environments where these changes in the future are so unclear? Do we go into Bitcoin? Do we not? Do we train our talent around cryptocurrency? Do we not? There's also a very complex world out there. For example, global warming. Here you can see in this chart how the world has warmed in the last 50 years, with red being some of the most warm places, especially around Europe. So your talent has to work in an environment that's extremely complex, and we're not entirely sure what is happening around global warming. We know it's getting warmer, but exactly how and what's going on is a very complex and difficult matter to understand. A speaks to ambiguity, and I think a great example of that is the pandemic and the COVID-19. What is the truth about COVID-19? Is the official record to be trusted? What about the conspiracy theories? What about this? What about that? Should you get the vaccine? Should you not? There are so many different perspectives on this. And I think what's just important to recognize is that it's ambiguous. No one really knows. There is no one absolute truth. So talent is also operating in an environment where we don't know. We just don't know what we should do anymore. And finally, we're operating in an environment of technological intensification. This is a really, really critical point for talent. To upskill talent, it needs to be able to understand technology. If you're not technologically literate as talent and you're not upskilling your people to be able to work with technology, then it's not going to be relevant in Industry 4.0. So the reason why I share this with you is because I want to provide an understanding of where our thinking is coming from. That talent needs to be able to deal with Industry 4.0's AVOCAT reality. That's the point of upskilling. You're not upskilling just to upskill. You're upskilling so people can cope with technology, with ambiguity, complexity, uncertainty, volatility, and accelerating change. That's really what upskilling is about. Of course, just a little humorous one I wanted to say here. This happened just yesterday, just a few days ago. One of my favorite ones where, of course, AVOCAT can also be ridiculous. I don't know if you saw this, but the dictator of Venezuela recently issued a challenge to Elon Musk that he'd have a fight with him, a proper fight. And Elon Musk replied on X, formerly known as Twitter, saying, "Okay, I accept the fight. If I win, he resigns as dictator of Venezuela. And if he wins, I'll give him a free ride to Mars." And, I think it's also part of recognizing we live in such a crazy world as well, that such funny things can happen, almost unimaginable. Dictator versus global billionaire. Let's see what happens there. So the point here is that we're talking about talent, we're talking about upskilling, and that we have to take on the AVOCAT challenge. Now, if your company is able to do this successfully, then you and your company will be extremely successful. So those organizations that upskill correctly will ride into massive success. And a great example of that is NVIDIA. NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang recently said in an interview with Wired magazine, "I think that people ought to learn all kinds of skills." Upskilling was critical to NVIDIA's success. It was able to provide gaming GPUs, crypto GPUs, it has AI software, it has AI hardware, and NVIDIA now has become one of the top 5 largest companies in the world with a multi-trillion-dollar valuation. I think it's really important to understand that you can only achieve this kind of success if you upskill your talent. And so only by upskilling talent are you able to not just keep up, but continue to keep up every year with the speed of Industry 4.0. And this is a really, really important point. However, if you don't keep up with upskilling, if you don't upskill enough, then what happens inside organizations is they start to become stagnant. They become, the people disengage from upskilling. I don't need to do it. It's not important. I'm too busy, blah, 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 blah. And that disengagement starts to create a cultural stagnation. What that results in is the arrival of what we call cultural viruses or cultural demons. And these are things that are very hard to touch, but are very, very poisonous and toxic. Cultures of ignorance, where people are resistant to change. I don't want to change. I don't need to. It's not necessary. For example, a company like Intel, which has been soundly beaten by NVIDIA to the trillion-dollar spot. A failure to upskill can create arrogance, a false sense of superiority. For example, Nokia, they thought that they were far ahead of Apple and shouldn't be worried by them. But of course, that was a big mistake. A lack of upskilling creates complacency, a failure to upgrade and keep up with the times. Maybe some of you might remember the famous BlackBerry Messenger or BBM, but today we're all using WhatsApp or Line or something like that. They were too complacent and they didn't upgrade fast enough. It also creates issues around delusion, where we create fundamentally wrong business strategies, for example, Blockbuster being defeated by Netflix, and even decay, in which the very organizational values become corrupted, for example, the Volkswagen Dieselgate scandal. So what I want to show here is that the failure to upskill is devastating for organizations. And I want to show it to you with the charts. I'm a big chart guy. So here is the share price of Intel over the last 5 years. And you can see here that their failure to upskill in the way that NVIDIA did has resulted in them having a 36% collapse in their share price. The story of Nokia is also similar. Once the global technology company, its share price has also declined over 20% in the last 5 years. The same also applies to BlackBerry, also a 67% drop. Why do these companies decline and fall? It's not because they lack money. It's not because they lack technology. It's not because of those hard tangibles. It's the intangibles. It's the culture. And very specifically, it's a failure in the culture to upskill quickly enough. Blockbuster versus Netflix. Blockbuster is a bit of an older company, but here we can see the transition as it occurred between 2007 and 2010. And then finally, the Volkswagen Group. If you bought Volkswagen shares 5 years ago, you now have lost nearly 33% of your money. So I think upskilling is critical to business success. And I think it's probably simply one of the most important things you can do from a strategic perspective. If you don't upskill, this cultural stagnation corrupts the organization. And what it basically means that employees become overwhelmed by outcome. If you're not upskilling your talent, your costs are going to rise, your revenue is going to fall, your technology is going to stagnate, and your customers and employees will leave you. And in the end, you will face strategic failure and your organization will collapse and die. At Leadapreneur, we call this innovate or die. So it's not just about seeing talent and upskilling as an HR requirement to tick boxes. It's understanding that in Industry 4.0, your upskilling strategy is fundamental to your business success. And if you get it right, you can rise to the very top like NVIDIA. But if you get it wrong, you can decline and fall very quickly. Now, I gave you an example of some global giants, but here are some examples of some local giants. So these are Malaysian companies. Axiata is a big regional telco operator. In the last 5 years, their share price has declined by nearly 50%. DRB Hicom, 42%. It's a large conglomerate here in Malaysia. And then some of you may or may not know this, but Grab, a company that I use every day and I love, but their share price has collapsed by 70% in the last 5 years. Now, what I'm trying to tell here is a story that by failing to upskill effectively and failing to prioritize upskilling, organizations are at great risk of being destroyed by avocat. But it's not as simple as just saying we need to upskill. How do you actually upskill fast enough in this avocat reality? Traditional training is not necessarily very effective or even efficient. If you tell Gen Y, or certainly Gen Z, that we're going to go sit in a 2-day workshop and watch a PowerPoint all day, they're going to yawn and be bored and scroll through TikTok videos instead. And there's no challenge in actually doing a traditional training session. You just turn up, tune out, get a certificate, eat some lunch and go home. That's it. And so it's not, it's important to understand at a conceptual level that even though we have this urgent necessity to upskill, we're struggling with finding the right way to actually practically and tangibly do that. People are too busy to attend training workshops and to be upskilled. They're prioritizing their business as usual, and they think the training is boring. It's unclear what the return of investment is for the business. We're investing in all this training. What's it actually doing? What's the point of it? And anything that gets done is more theater than actually delivering results. And there's also an element there of cultural stagnation, of what's the point even? There's no motivation. And even if we do succeed, who cares? No one's tracking it. There's no data around it. And we're not able to understand at an individual level who's upskilling themselves and who isn't. So what I'm going to tell you is what you need to do in order to be able to upskill your talent and defeat this Industry 4.0 avocat. And what it's about creating a culture of upskilling by combining training with gaming and the quest for glory. So first of all, I want to focus on that word culture. It's about understanding that you're creating a continuous culture of upskilling. It's not a one-off thing. It's seen as a strategic imperative and priority. And for example, you can see in institutions like the United States military, any serious military, in fact, is fundamentally focused on continuous upskilling. But how do we bring this together? What are the elements here that I'm breaking down for you? First, I do want to make it clear, we do need serious training. It is important to have good training. It should be serious and focused, but understand that training in the end is just about talking and a little bit of thinking. You're sitting in a workshop somewhere, you're going to learn some interesting things, but that's all you're doing. You're just talking. And talking doesn't create upskilling. Just because you watched just because you watch some videos doesn't mean you've been upskilled. Any more than if I watch some videos on how to speak Vietnamese, it doesn't mean I can speak Vietnamese. So we need to understand the limitations of training. And that's where gaming comes in. Gaming is extremely engaging. Gaming is action orientated. And gaming is something that we can keep playing and participating in over and over again. Now, people might think that gaming is just for kids, but actually gaming is sort of at the fundamental heart of being able to drive talent and being able to test things. For example, the militaries of the world all engage in wargaming. That's what that picture shows there. And wargaming is the way in which you're able to evaluate and upskill talent and test, is my talent actually effective? Just because they went to a training workshop on how to shoot a gun doesn't mean that the military unit can actually be combat effective. So what I'm presenting to you here is that upskilling requires both training and gaming. Bring the serious training, but also bring the fun gaming, which is action-orientated and engaging in the sense of being exciting and motivating people to compete and then try and win. And that's what Anita was talking about a little bit earlier. That third point there, it has to be glorious. It has to be worthwhile. There's no point doing it and then people say, all right, whatever, go home. What we yearn for as human beings is recognition. It's not even just about rewards. It's about being recognized for our greatness and the amazing things that we did. So for example, the Champions League, the UEFA Champions League, one of the top professional tournaments for football in the world. In the end, it's just a bunch of guys, 22 guys kicking a ball around on a pitch. I mean, it's a very simple formula, right? You could do that in any village, anywhere in the world. So why do we pay attention to these specific 22 individuals? Because they are the best of the best. Those players in the Champions League are the elite, and we look up to them and we admire them and we respect them. And so this is what you have to provide for your talent too, a way of becoming glorious, the way of becoming recognized as being excellent, and to be able to compete and compare yourself to others. And when we look at all sports, whether it's soccer, rugby, baseball, chess, so many different sports, and they're all about being able to compete. And really it's about the competition, the competitive element there, but you're creating in that a desire for becoming better, for upskilling, Okay, you lose this game. How can we be better next time? How can we make sure we win the championship next time? And this starts to transform the organization. So when I talk about gamified upskilling, when I talk about going from talent to gaming, what I'm talking about is saying we need to combine serious training with fun gaming and glorious success, putting those three together. So let's go into a bit more detail on that. When we focus on the serious training, what we've done as Leadapreneur is we've identified the key skills that you need to develop in order to be able to compete and succeed in Industry 4.0's avocat reality. Because remember, that's what we are upskilling for. We need people who can cope with complex chaos. And so what that requires is upgrading your people into what we call the Leadapreneur. The Leadapreneurs are elite autonomous innovators. That means they're excellent, they operate on their own, and they're focused on creating innovation. So your training should focus on developing people's leadership skills. It should focus on developing their management skills, their entrepreneurship skills, their collaboration skills, and their communication skills. These 5 are the critical skills that your employees, and in particular your talent, will need in order to be able to succeed in Industry 4.0's avocat reality. Without these skills, your talent will be overwhelmed and will struggle to succeed. It's no longer enough to just say, I'm a manager, I have management skills. You will need entrepreneurial skills. You will need strong communication skills, and so on. It's also about building the right kind of mindset. You can see in the middle of the diagram here, a leaderpreneur believes in themselves. A leaderpreneur is brave, is bold, is brilliant. They're going out and they're believing in building a better world. So as much as it's about upgrading the skill set, it's also about upgrading the mindset inside the individual. So this is what you should focus your serious training on, building these kind of skills and this kind of mindset in your talent. When you then go about gamifying and engaging your talent to play the game, you have to ask yourself, what game are we actually going to play? And so here's an example of what we've built as Leadapreneur. We call it Cosmos. And what it is an innovation platform that guides professionals to deploy real projects with measurable ROI, but in a fun and gamified manner. And so what's exciting about this is when you join our platform, you're actually taking on an innovation quest. So even though you're doing real work with real measurable outcomes, you're going through it in a gamified manner, that with your own avatar, you're going through the forest of ideas, you're defeating the spider of fear along the way. And this makes it much more engaging and much more exciting, especially for your Gen Y and Gen Z talent. And then thirdly, it's about recognizing that gamification creates the culture that inspires talent to succeed. We want to bring up excellence, and we do that through rewards and recognition. So it's about celebrating talent. So in these pictures here, you can see some of the way that we as Leadapreneur work with talent and celebrate their success. Those avatars you can see there are individual Leadapreneur avatars that people have created. And they win all kinds of rewards and prizes and are celebrated in their search for excellence. But what's also really cool about this is that we have a data-driven approach. If you know a little bit about sport, you know that sport lies at the heart of data today. Any soccer player, any rugby player, any baseball player, any basketball player is having all their data tracked rigorously and continuously every day, all day. How many times you kick the ball, how hard your heart is beating, how fast you were running, how many calories you've burned. You create a datafied picture of that talent. And so this is also why it's so important to move to gaming, because gaming allows you to create data profiles on your talent that's playing the game. If you only remain with training, you're never going to get the data you need to be able to evaluate whether your talent is actually effective or not. So what I want to do now is I want to take you through a case study of how we've been applying this with one of our clients called DBS Bank in Singapore, and how we've been working with them for the last 5 years to level up their talent to embrace the AI revolution. And I think it's a really cool story because it's going to show you how we've been putting into practice the things that I've been talking about. So what we've been doing is we've been working on something called the Warriors of WOW program. And here you can see an example of how we bring it to life. So this is how we actually present it inside the bank, inside the organization. You see this awesome picture of a dragon, heroic warriors rushing there into the battle. And this is kind of the feeling that people get. So even though they're 30, 40-year-old seasoned banking professionals, they get excited by this. It's a completely different perspective to just saying, hey, we're going to run a training workshop. We're saying we're taking you on a gamified innovation quest to defeat the demon of complacency. And that really gets them motivated and gets them inspired to do great things. So overall, this is sort of a quick summary of what we've been doing. We've been working with their top talent inside the bank to upskill themselves by going on epic innovation quests. So we actually just completed the 5th season yesterday. So I can give you the latest data. So in general, over the last 5 years, we've helped the bank create 78 million Sing dollars of innovation projects. We've upskilled 450 of their talents into leadapreneurs. And that has been happening for 5 years now with a result of over 200 projects deployed. And so I think this is also an important understanding of essentially what we're doing is every year we're playing the same innovation game with them over and over again. And by playing the game every year, they get better and better and better. And that's why those numbers keep going up and up and up. So it's also about understanding that when you say you want to gamify upskilling, it has to have a strategic approach to it. It's not something you can just do once off. You should be looking at a minimum of 2 to 3 years. And I think realistically, you should be thinking 3 to 5 years ahead. That's the kind of strategic HR learning development approach that will enable you to become a business contributor rather than just a tactical operator inside the organization. So how do we do it? What do we actually do with them? Well, what we do is we organize the people into what we call innovation armies. So if we have 100 people, we would create, for example, 5 to 10 armies of about 10 to 20 people each. And when they are playing our innovation games, every individual leaderpreneur has a different role. So if you are one of the blue characters, you're what we call the innovator. And your role is to create your own innovation project. So you are then fighting to create your own strategically aligned, KPI relevant, agile innovation project. Now, along the way, you're going to be succeeded by someone else. You're going to be coached by one of the coaches, but this coach actually comes from the bank. They're not from the Leadapreneur team. They are learning, and their game is they're playing the game of learning how to be a coach, and they are coaching the innovators. So you can see in the top left there where it says cohort 1, those innovators are coming together to learn how to create projects around, for example, hashtag efficiency. And the coach in the top left, there is coaching them around improving efficiency. But if you have a look in the bottom left, in cohort number 3, that is about hashtag customer. So those innovators are focusing on creating projects that will help the customers instead and improving customer satisfaction. So everyone's doing real world projects in their own way, but they are doing it in a gamified manner. And all of this is being led by a sort of a middle upper senior vice president usually, who is what we call the governor, and they're leading this entire army to deliver projects that are going to improve the scorecard priorities that have been set by the senior. So what this all means is that we're organizing people into roles, and they're performing these roles to go on delivering real world work. You're delivering real innovation projects with real measurable ROI. For example, you're earning new revenue, or for example, you're cutting and improving processes. So it doesn't take 5 hours for the process, maybe it only takes 5 minutes. But they're coming together in a way that's not a sort of Six Sigma program. It's not meant to be boring. It's meant to be really engaging and fun. And then by playing the game together, we all upskill ourselves together. And this is then the adventure that we go on. We call it Battlefield BAU. And that army that I just showed you there will then go through a series of essentially computer game levels that we call Journey 1, Journey 2, and Journey 3. In the first journey, they're designing digital mock-ups. Then they're going to build in Journey 2 prototypes. And then in Journey 3, they're actually going to deploy those prototypes to build a better business as usual. So what I think is really cool about this is that we are finding the right way to blend real world work. We are combining training, serious training, with gaming. We're playing this innovation game. And the result of it is that we have a lot of success, and we're celebrating that along the way. So I just want to tell you the story to give you an example of this upskilling. This is a real world, real person. His name is Mr. Kevin Liu. And he started in season 1 as one of the innovators. He's a frontline innovator. So he's creating his own individual project. You can see that in the blue here. He deployed a project which is a smart monitoring auto recovery toolkit. So what that basically meant is when servers go down, they're able to recognize they're going down and automatically recover themselves and reset themselves without needing to manually do that. That was his project. He did that successfully. and he completed his first season playing the Battlefield BAU innovation game with us. He then came back in season 2, and he was now a coach. He's upgraded. He's gone from soldier to officer, basically. And what he's now doing is he's coaching the other innovators to create their own projects. And you can see here how he increased the valuation from 243,000 Sing to 1 million Sing. So the projects that he coached were a total value of 1 million. And then he came back in season 3, and this time he's the governor. He's able to lead strategic impact on the scorecard, and he led a whole army of leaderpreneurs to deliver 1.4 million Sing dollars on critical scorecard priorities. So this is an example of how we upskill talent by applying the principles I've been talking to you. By going through these seasons, Kevin was experiencing serious training workshops. We're giving workshops. He's experiencing playing the innovation game. And he's also able to earn glory and success for himself by winning awards, earning prizes, and being recognized by his peer group and seniors as being a top talent inside the organization. So that's what I wanted to share with you. The overall story here is the critical challenge that we face today is about how do we upskill talent to defeat Avocat? How do we upskill talent fast enough to make sure we can keep up with the pace of change so that we are successful in it rather than being defeated by it? And what I've shared with you, the key insight is that it's about combining serious training with fun gaming and glorious success. And that's what we do as Leadapreneur. We provide these gamified upskilling programs. And what's really cool about them is they have a measurable ROI to them, which means we're able to demonstrate to the business a positive return on investment that's very successful and very good. So if you're interested in finding out a little bit more, do reach out to me on LinkedIn. You can see that in the bottom right there, or through email. And we can tell you how we take people through this exciting Leadapreneur Innoverse, where we start in the digital wonderland, we go to Battlefield BAU, and then we can even reach for the top for peak performance. So that's all I'd like to share with you. Thank you so much for listening to me, and I'd like to open up to any questions that people have. All right, well, let's see if we can now have any questions. Anita, are there any questions that you'd like to ask?
Well, I don't have any question, Jan, but I'm just thinking of your gamification versus the learning that so I'm working on a project, right? So we are also having a training for some of the new software users, and I have not gone through the learnings in detail, but we included some gamification into it, and I saw some review of it, and all they have is just a trophy and a thumbs up. So that seems so like baby steps compared to where you guys have gone. It's a real full-fledged gamification there, but it's certainly given me some ideas to give to the project manager and the trainer to go, I mean, a bit more in terms of gamification for the following rollout. So yeah, I mean that's a real gamification that you've done there.
Yeah, well, I think what's important is it has to be meaningful.
Yeah, mm-hmm.
That's actually the sort of, it can be just a small little trophy, but it's are we celebrating that trophy? Are we celebrating the person who's won that? Are we sincere in our celebration of that person?
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to be doing the kind of like UAT for the learning. So yeah. So this has certainly given me some ideas. So like we said, even though it's nothing compared to your type of gamification, but what meaning does it give? Does it celebrate the user? Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And I think that, so, and the trick there is to kind of make it authentic, right? To make it sincere.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks for the tips.
You're welcome. Thank you, Anita, for sharing your thoughts as well. All right. Does anyone here have any questions they'd like to ask? I'm just gonna.
Yeah. Yes, Jan. I just want to know what kind of talent within an organization would you want to put through a program like this?
That's a great question, Maria. I think the kind of talent we're looking for is people who are ambitious, who are up for the challenge of upskilling it themselves in the first place. So they have to be ambitious and motivated in the sense that they want to do more. Sometimes people can become a little bit complacent and comfortable, and they don't want to do the difficult thing. Because the truth is that to grow, you must do challenging things. And indeed, the greater the challenge, the greater the opportunity to grow. So it's about finding the right kind of talent in the organization that's excited by the challenge and is willing to say, I want to step up and take on this challenge. And then, of course, to add to that point, it has to be across all levels of the organization. I think that's also important. It's not just saying, oh, we'll send the frontline people to go do it, but never mind about the seniors. The seniors must be upskilled just as importantly as the frontline, just as importantly as middle management. They all need to be upskilled together. And that's quite tricky to do. And that's why we, when we play our innovation games, we get the seniors, the middle management, and the frontline to all come together and innovate together and upskill together. And that's the way in which we ensure that everyone is being effective in their upskilling.
Okay, thank you. So that would be a challenge then, to get the seniors to be involved in a program like this, right?
Yes. So there's different levels of involvement that they can be in. And I think it's when you get involved with something, you're often asking yourself, what's the return on investment? What's the ROI, right? And so by getting involved with these programs, the seniors at DBS Bank find it very valuable. And so that's why they justify investing their time into it, because they get a lot out of it. Because again, the challenge is AppleCat is going to keep happening. The seniors of Nokia did not upskill themselves fast enough. The seniors of the other Intel did not upskill themselves fast enough. The seniors of all the other organizations I mentioned. So there has to be this willingness to have this honest conversation, a mature conversation in the organization to say, are we doing enough to upskill? How can we be confident we're doing enough? Because the pace of change is very rapid and organizations are rising very quickly and falling very quickly. And so taking a strategic approach to upskilling must require that seniors are involved. And I just think it's a bit naive to think that sending a senior to a 2-day workshop once a year is going to be enough to upskill them. It's just not going to be enough. Over a 3, 4, 5-year period, that senior probably won't have been able to catch up with the latest technology, the latest trends, the latest culture changes, so much change. So we have to support them in being able to keep up with that pace of change. And that's why playing an innovation game like I'm sharing here with you can be a really efficient and effective way of doing that. Okay, so thank you, Tien, for your question there. How can we ensure that the gamified training program aligns with the company culture and the development needs of Vietnamese employees? That's a really good question, right? Because if you don't get that right, there'll be a lot of cultural resistance. People won't want to do it. And as a result, it will be a failure. We don't want that. So we want to be sensitive from the beginning. That being said, having worked in Southeast Asia since 2008, Cambodia, Singapore, and Malaysia in particular, what I found is that generally we have common standards of excellence. So in terms of aligning with the company culture, organizations want to be excellent. They want to strive to be the best. And so the program sort of has to have that fundamental commitment to that universal. Do we want to be excellent or not? Yes or no? The answer is probably going to be yes, we do want to be excellent. Okay. So then how can we use our local values to define excellence in the way that's right for us? So to answer your question, it's about, first of all, coming to an agreement that we want to achieve something great, that we want to do gamified training to be excellent. And then we're going to talk about how we use our values to achieve that. So it's about inviting the conversation about using the values to pursue the path of excellence. And I think then that can make it flexible. If that could be done, that's done for Vietnamese employees or Singaporean employees. The program that I showed you with EBS, we're running that program in India, China, Hong Kong, Taiwan, Indonesia, and Singapore. And by practicing what I just shared with you, creating a common commitment to excellence, and then localizing it through the different values that, and recognizing excellence, we're able to achieve those results. I think, Anita, yes, you have another question there.
Yeah. So I was just thinking, I was saying that our gamification is very baby steps compared to what you've done. So here's just wondering, so the users will have to learn online. How do we even get them to go online to learn? How do we create that excitement to get them to go and learn online?
Well, you have to hire Leadapreneur. That's the answer. I mean, but you know that's really that's the challenge, isn't it? I think from what I can share, it's about trying to find the way that gets them inspired and excited. So it's not about getting them to go online. It's about getting them excited and inspired to play the game, and part of playing the game means going online to do things.
Okay.
So in that sense, so it's really about figuring out, you know, what would get people excited, right?
Right. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Great question, Anita. Thank you. We've got Zach. Yes.
To see.
Hi everyone. Hi Ian. So yeah, I'm just curious about something. This is just a bit combination of what has been questioned by Miss Anita, Miss Tian, and Miss Mary. So one thing, when we talk about the talent requirement, right? So the talent requirement, as you said, that somebody that really want to upskill themselves, really have that motivation. Number two, when you talk about culture, so the culture itself, like the Vietnamese people, they will you will have to absorb in with their culture. But in Malaysia, for example, if let's say the person or the talent, they want to really get involved with this gamification, but do you provide the better feel in a multi-language session? Because I know somebody that really interested in this kind of method or session, but they might have like this language barrier per se. So how do you tackle that? I mean, they really interested, but maybe the language, some of them, that what demotivate them.
Great question there, Zach. I think the answer in the short term for now, and being practical, is that we only run it in English. But I do foresee that what I'm seeing with AI means that very quickly, I think within the next 2 to 3 years, maybe even faster, probably actually even today, that could be addressed. So for example, it's now possible to use AI to translate text. It's possible to translate what I'm saying right now into different languages. There was a video, I don't know if you saw that, from the Grab founder, Anthony Tan, where he sent a welcome message to all the Grab drivers in all the different languages using an AI avatar. And he was able to speak in the different languages across Southeast Asia using artificial intelligence. So the short answer is that for now, we'd have to stick to English, but I do expect within the next 2 to 3 years, we'll be able to use artificial intelligence to bridge that language gap.
Okay, great.
But that, just as a comment on that, because that's what I've also seen in my years of working here is that people who have learned, I'm fortunate that I grew up in London, so I'm a native English speaker, but many people here in the region are not, but they speak very good English and we're able to communicate together very effectively. And what I've noticed is that people who have invested in learning English is the kind of talent that you want to look for, that's hungry and ambitious to keep learning and keep upskilling. So generally, if someone has English as a strong second language, that person is probably going to be good at Leadapreneur because they've got to a good level of English because they're interested in investing themselves and upskilling themselves. So it can be a good correlation factor that people who have practice, who are able to do the program because they're able to speak English, are probably going to be the right talent for the program in the first place. Let's see if anyone else has a question there. How about Farah? Hi, Farah. How are you? Do you have any questions for me today?
There's a question in the chat, actually. Do you see it? In the
Q&A?
Yes,
yeah, I answered that one earlier. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. But I think why we're kind of, because I think Ms. Tian's question and Zach's question are kind of related around language, right? And language and cultural differences. That's also one of the beautiful things about games, is that they can transcend that. You can throw a football into any kampong or village in Cambodia, Vietnam, Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia, and the children will kick the ball around and play, and so will the adults. You don't have to necessarily be able to speak the language to play the game. And so a well-designed game can engage and inspire people to play and to participate and to engage. And going back to what Anita was saying earlier, that's the key challenge today. The key challenge is, how do you engage employees who are disengaged? You find a fun game to play with them. And so I think that's also one of the powers of gamification, is to overcome those differences and that disengagement. Yes, Hannah, please do ask your question.
Yes, Jan. If you go to Q&A, you will see there's a question there. So it's asking what level of expertise is required to participate in your program. Additionally, is it suitable for senior executives or C-level professionals to engage in the Digital Wonderland initiative?
Where is that Q&A?
If you go to activities with the one with the squares and the.
Oh, I see. Yes. Okay. No level of expertise, to be honest. I think it's designed to be able to match where you are and just uplift you to the next level. So you could be a junior person, you could be so we have different roles that you can take on inside the program. So we can handle people who are generally new, people who are middle management, and people who are senior management, and we can adapt the game accordingly. So the level of expertise is not necessarily something beyond, I would say, a university degree. So that would basically probably be a fundamental sort of expectation. But even then, we've run programs for people, for example, in rural Cambodia, who had not had the chance to have a lot of education, and they were also very successful on it. So really, what the level of expertise is less important. What's more important is your level of spirit, your motivation, your ambition, and your desire and drive to upskill yourself and become better. That's really the quality, the requirement for being on the programs. In terms of engaging senior executives or C-levels, absolutely, for the Digital Wonderland. Yeah, we have something, we call it the digital captain role. So we have 3 roles. We have digital captain, which is for digital explorer, which is sort of for frontline staff. We have digital navigator for middle-level operations staff. And we have digital captain, which is about exploring strategic shift inside organizations and in the local business landscapes. So that's the right kind of role for those individuals from a C-level program. And that's one of the things I've designed into what we do as Leadapreneur, is that we're accessible for the frontline, the middle management, and the senior executives all together, because I think we have to provide a unified space. When you think about wargaming in an army, the soldiers, the officers, and the generals are all playing the war game together to try and win the battle or win the war. And that's really, really key insight. And I think one of the challenges of traditional training is to artificially separate seniors from middle management and from frontline. That can be useful to some extent, but I think it's dangerous and unhelpful to practice that all the time. And a program like the Digital Wonderland can bring everyone together to talk about ideas and create exciting proposals together. I never knew about the Q&A section. I've learned a new thing here, Hannah. Thank you to whoever asked that question. Yes, Mary, please ask your question.
For example, like a Digital Wonderland, and assuming you put like 100 frontliners, how much time would they need to invest in something like that?
So the basic requirement for Digital Wonderland would be about 3 to 6 hours, depending on how we would structure it. So we up to 6 hours max. So yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so we're coming up to the hour here. This has been a great fun session to share and talk with you about our latest ideas around going from training to gaming. Before we bring this to an end, it's the last chance for anyone to ask any questions or ask or share anything that they think would be valuable.
I just want to say thank you very much for sharing, Jan. It certainly has given me some ideas and inspiration to see how I can help the software company to upgrade their learning to, learning software, learning about a program is just so boring, no? So to kind of make it interesting through gamification, but although it might not be as sophisticated as what you have, but the keywords like authentic, celebrate, those certainly are some ideas that we can give them and see what they can program into it.
Absolutely. And I think, I often test, like, do I think it's fun? Would I like to do this? Right?
Okay.
It's so easy to think that, oh, they'll do it, but do I want to do it? Right?
Yeah. Thanks so much for sharing, Ian.
You're welcome, Anita. Great to speak to you again.
Likewise.
All right, everybody. I think that brings us to the end. I'd like to say thank you very much for joining us. If you want to reach out, please do say hello to me on LinkedIn or reach out to the Leadapreneur team on our website, and we'd love to have a chat. Otherwise, I wish you a wonderful and very happy Friday, wherever you are in the world. And make sure you keep upskilling yourself to succeed in this Industry 4.0 reality. It's going to be an exciting ride in the next few years. So best wishes for a lovely afternoon. Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you so much, Shannon. Thank you, everyone, for joining us.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.